Really excited to be here today and talk about email communication because a lot of us present maybe once a week, once a month, once a quarter, where maybe in meetings, multiple times a week, but may not always be leading those meetings. We are sending hundreds of emails a day. So if there is one medium that we need to master when it comes to communication, if there's one medium where we really need to make sure that our communication is as clear as possible, it's email. And the way that we teach email writing is through the pyramid principle. And for those of you who haven't joined us on prior calls, we'll send the recordings out of those calls so you can get caught up on what pyramid principle is. But at a high level, pyramid principle tells us that we, number one, lead our communication with our key takeaway. And number two, tell a shorter, more curated story that includes only the relevant data that reinforces the key takeaway that we're bringing to the table that day. And so the two high-level tenets of pyramid principle are, number one, you lead with a key takeaway. Number two, you support that takeaway with the right data, not all the data. So that's going to be the lens that we're using to walk through our teaching on emails today. And the first reason why this is so critical for us to understand and why this is so important to Jenny Ray and I, and why we built this training after our own experience, very similar to how actually AWS started as an internal solution before they started selling it externally, is because of this right here. And that's that our perceived credibility is based 76% on the way that we structure our communication and only 24% on what we actually say. And let me just repeat that so everybody understands.
Say it for the people in the back, come on.
76% of our perceived credibility comes from how we say what we say, and only a quarter of our perceived credibility comes from what we're actually saying. And what I find, even this morning when I was working with folks from from an organization that we're partnering with, what I find is that we spend so much time focused on what we're saying that we ignore how we're saying it. And in the presentation that I was working through this morning with a senior leader at a large organization, the content was fantastic, but it was really difficult for me to follow the implications of that content because there was no story and no structure that was put around the content that they had. And so there was a disconnect between how they were going to be perceived, the structure of their communication, and what they thought was most important, which was the content. And so this isn't a made-up stat. I didn't just make it up to support my point. This is based off of a study that was recently published in the Harvard Business Review. And so you can go and look that up and verify for yourself that what we're telling you today is true in terms of your perceived credibility.
Naman, I know you're going to talk about this related to emails, but can I just bring an insight that we've had this last quarter, I think, as we've been working with some of the schools that we're working with, we've done a lot of case competition trainings in the schools. And so everybody is sitting there trying to figure out the best information and the greatest insight and build this amazing model. And our general the truth that we tell them, which they don't believe until they experience it, is that a great story, simply well told, will beat great content every day. And so that's really the port that we're putting over into emails, is that the maximum amount of information, not the point. The highest quality of information, still not the point. We're not saying that you fudge it or that you are eroding the value of that, but that a great structure is the only way that people will receive a great story. And so if you have great content and you don't have great structure, you get a 0 100% of the time. The only way you get credit for your work is if you have both. And so I think that's that. I just want to highlight that in another setting where we've been seeing that over and over again. And we get these great data rich presentations that have no arc, no story, no answer. We even did one with our strategy sprint last week, and I was the partner on that project. And I met with all the teams on Thursday, and I was like, great work. And it's terrible. Right. And so I had them all redo in 24 hours the storyline because the structure didn't exist. So just wanted to bring that in from a couple of other places that we've talked about it as well.
The best story always wins. And that's true across all settings. My background is in political communication. Look at candidates that are running for any office. It's rarely the best candidate that wins. It's the candidate with the clearest message that wins. Look at the stock market. What are the stocks that outperform indexes and their competition? They are stocks that are supported by the best and the clearest and the most compelling story. Right. If you look at Tesla's performance over the last 10 years, I would call Tesla a story stock. The market cap of Tesla didn't necessarily correlate with the business performance of Tesla at that time. And so no matter where you're playing, where you're working, what you're communicating, the best story always wins. And so that's what we're here to try and impart to you today, is the ability to tell the clearest and the best story. And if you can marry that with the best content, more power to you. But a better story will be better content almost every single time. So here are our 2 recommended structures for writing a clear email. We're just going to give you the templates right here. And then we're going to work through writing an email in one of these 2 templates as we move towards the end of our time together today. But there are 2 main types of emails that I would recommend that you send. And if your emails don't fit within one of these 2 structures, then I would really push back on if there's a reason for you to send that email. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So the 2 types of emails that I'd recommend you send are answer first and answer last. Let's start with answer first on the left-hand side of this slide. An answer first email is when you're looking to drive action from the email itself. There's some action that you want your audience or your stakeholders to take. And so let's start from the very beginning, the very top, the subject line. I saw a couple people mention the subject line as a pain point inside the chat as we were starting this conversation around emails. One of the things that we found really, really beneficial at Management Consulted and with some of our partner organizations is instituting a tagging method to our emails. And so there are 3 tags that we use internally for our team as we're sending emails. There's an action tag, a meeting tag, and then an info or an update tag. And so inside of my subject line, in brackets, before I get to my subject line, the first thing that I include in brackets is either an A, an I, or an M. And our team internally knows what A, I, and M stand for. But if you need to build that out a little bit, A is action, I is information, and M is meeting. And so just from the beginning of the subject line, my audience and my stakeholders understand what it is that they're going to be asked to do coming out of that particular email. And if you use your inbox as a to-do list, if you're looking at your inbox from like a 30,000 foot view, it helps you triage your day, your week, and your month, because you can see, okay, I'm going to click on the action requested, the action-oriented emails first, and I'll catch up on all my update emails at the end of the day.
Or never.
Or never. You're able to help your audience focus. I like to say clarity is kindness. So the clearer you are, the kinder you're being to your audience. But if you build a reputation for sending emails that are meaningful, whether they're action or update oriented, even your update emails will get read. But if you haven't built a reputation as someone who always sends meaningful emails, then yeah, your update emails won't get read. So one of our goals today is to help you build a reputation, either internally or externally, where people know, okay, every time Jenny Ray sends me an email, there's something in there I need to know or I need to do. So I'm going to open the emails that she sends me, but I'm going to maybe open the update emails a little bit later. But if she hasn't built that reputation with me, then yeah, I'm absolutely going to ignore the update emails. So one of our goals today is to not just help you drive faster action, not just help you clarify for yourself what you want to communicate, but actually help you enhance your reputation with the stakeholders that you're interfacing with. So let's dive a little bit deeper now into this action-oriented email here on the left-hand side of the slide. So I start it with a tag, start the subject line with a tag. Action requested is my preferred way of doing that. I think action required is a little bit of a stronger tone, and maybe with people you work with often, that can work well. But with folks who you don't have that kind of relationship with, I like to soften it a little bit and say action requested, or maybe just even action. And then after the brackets, my subject line is my ask. So the content of my subject line is exactly what I'm going to ask for in the email. We'll skip over name. I think we all know what name is. I'll skip over that. And I want to get to this point here that I think is critical. Writing an email in this format is not an excuse to be rude and doesn't require you to be rude. So if I'm writing Jenny Ray an email, I can write her an email. I can say, Jenny Ray, I hope you had a great weekend. Jenny Ray, I hope you're gearing up for a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope your week is off to a great start, right? This type of structure does not preclude me from including pleasantries inside of my email communication, but it does focus me and give me a structure to operate within. So my first line can include her name and include whatever small talk or pleasantry I want to include. And then after that, I get right to my specific ask. Well, here's why I'm writing you this email. There's something I'd like you to do. Jenny Ray, can you please review the deck for Tuesday's email call by Monday at 5 p.m.? What is it that I'm asking you to do? And I'm going to give you a deadline associated with the action. One of the secrets I found to effective communication is everything should include a deadline, even if it's a 100% arbitrary. Again, what am I doing? I am helping my audience, my stakeholders, plan and triage their days and their weeks. And I'm being really, really clear with what I'm asking for and by when I need it. If I don't include a deadline, there's a critical component to the action that's missing, which is the timeline. So do the thinking for your audience and give them a deadline, give them a timeline. Underneath that specific ask, I include 2 to 3 bullet points that really touch on two different themes. Either why that ask is important for Jenny Ray to complete by Monday at 5 p.m. and or how she can execute it. So sometimes our audience needs to know why we're asking them to do what we're asking them to do so that they can understand the importance of it. And often they also need to understand how they need to do what they're being asked to do. So those 2 to 3 need to know facts can answer 2 questions, the why and the how. And I really limit myself to a maximum of 3 need to know facts. Those of you who are on this call that have been in our kind of 8-hour, like full-blown corporate trainings know this well, that we are big believers in the rule of 3. If you think of stories that you've grown up interacting with, you think of the theater, you think of Hollywood. If you think of numbers that you have memorized, whether they're credit card numbers or phone numbers, you'll find that Hollywood and the arts, theater, tell stories in 3-act structures. Human beings are wired to respond to stories in parts of 3. And if you think through the phone numbers and the credit card numbers you have memorized, chances are you've got them memorized in sets of 3 to 4 digits. There's something about the rule of 3 that ensures your story remains sticky and is able to be digested by your audience. You give me 8 bullet points, I'm going to ignore all of them. You give me 3, okay, I can digest that and I can understand why you need me to do what you're asking me to do. After those bullet points, you're going to end with next steps. So in my hypothetical example for Jenny Ray here, next steps might be, Jenny Ray, can you please, respond to the comments I left in the slides and align with me on, right, how we want to open and close the conversation, right? And I've left you comments and questions inside the deck, right? And can you please return the deck to me again by Monday, 5 p.m.? All right. Thanks so much, Naman. I'm going to get really tactical at the end of my email and end with whatever the next steps are that help the person action the request that I've made at the beginning of the email. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, but it's not rude. And so if I believe that I can drive action within 2 to 3 email exchanges, then I send an email like that. If I don't think that the person is going to be willing or able to respond positively to my request within 2 to 3 emails, then I send the same email, but instead of asking them to do something, I ask them for a short meeting. The request becomes for a meeting. And then I come to the meeting with an agenda that includes what my ask is, why that's my ask, and what the next steps would be coming out of that meeting. But we hash it out over a 5 to 15-minute conversation. I found that to be much more efficient than the 10, 20, 100 email chains that we're all on that go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So that's how you write an answer first or action-oriented email. Let's quickly talk about why and how you'd write an update-oriented email, and then I'll address a couple of special scenarios. So an update-oriented email is for communication where you are just sharing information or an update. There's no immediate action attached to it. So maybe it's a recap or a review of a project. Maybe it's an update email you're sending a supervisor. Maybe you're just checking in with a client and letting them know what's been done over the last week or the last quarter and what the implications of that are moving forward. There's nothing you need from them, but it's just information that's important for them to know. Couple of key differences between an update and an action-oriented email. The first key difference is that your headline, your key message is now not a request for an action, but it is why you are sending the message that you're sending. The key message is, here's why this is important for you to know. So that becomes my subject line, and that also becomes the first line of my email. The bullet points underneath that first line then become the actual heart of the update. What are the 2 to 3 need-to-know facts that comprise the update? What's the data? What is the information that is so important for you to know? Here it is in bulleted format, easy for you to digest, hopefully categorized, and easy for you to read even on a mobile phone. After those bullet points, I still end with next steps. They're just mine. So as a result of this information, as a result of this update, here's what I'm going to do next week. Here's what the next phase of the engagement looks like. Here's what changes moving forward in terms of this project. There's nothing I need from you, but here's what I'm doing as a result of this. What a fantastic way to build trust with senior leaders, with managers, and with clients. Giving them visibility into what's happening, being transparent about what you're going to do next, and giving them a chance to confirm or readjust your thinking if they want. But really sending the message, hey, everything's okay. I've got this. Leave me the heck alone. That's really the reason you'd send an update-oriented email. And if you are relatively new inside of a team or an organization, one of our recommendations for you is that you write this kind of email every day your first 90 days on the job. I wouldn't send it every day, but I would write it every day to ensure that the work that you're doing aligns with what your stakeholders find important and with the overall mission and goals of the team or of your leaders. And I'd probably send an email like this once a week for my first 3 months on the job and build a reputation as someone who is transparent, someone who's thinking about the implications of my work, someone who's thinking about what the next steps are going to be for me moving forward, and someone who's giving my supervisors, my leaders, a chance to confirm or readjust my thinking if they want to. And you'll find after 3 months, you would have built an incredible amount of trust. And instead of me as a leader feeling anxiety when I don't hear from you, you would have built a reputation as someone who's on top of their stuff, someone who's thinking about the implications of their work, and someone who understands the importance of what they're doing. And I won't need to see this email after your first 3 months on my team. But that'll really just enhance your influence, your effectiveness, and the trust that you're building inside of a team or a relationship just by sending a simple email like this. Now, I'm sure that some of you are thinking, okay, This all sounds great, but there's a couple of special scenarios here that I want to bring up. And so here are a couple of scenarios that I often hear when we're talking about email communication. The first is I'm often sending emails to large groups of stakeholders, and it's very easy for the group to go off on rabbit trails. And the original email that I sent with the original ask is not where the conversation ends up going on the thread. What do I do if that ends up being the case? Couple of ideas for you. The first is to set up a shared doc that you can invite people to leave comments, questions, and updates on, that dynamically updates as a reference for folks along that topic. So instead of going back and forth in an email 100 times, if you know you're going to be requesting feedback from a lot of people, or if you know that the conversation is going to go down rabbit trails, you can initially set up a Google Doc or another type of shared document that invites people to leave feedback in one place, where it's easy to categorize and easy for everybody to follow. I've even in the past set up a Google Doc where I've beforehand left a specific number of lines for each person that's on the email chain, so that just psychologically, they know they've got 2 lines to leave their questions or their comments, instead of just an open-ended doc that's an infinite number of pages long. So one solution or potential solution to maybe some of the rabbit trails you're seeing in email chains is to set up a shared doc ahead of time. Another one is to be the instigator of a new email chain when the subject changes. And I found a great way to do this is just when I reply to an email to just change the subject line. And it shows up in my inbox now as a new conversation and reminds everybody about what the ask has now become for this particular topic or this conversation. So food for thought there, just in terms of a couple ways that you can control and wrangle some of the large stakeholder groups that you're emailing, as you move throughout your week. I'm going to pause there, and I'll just let Jenny Ray speak to this if there's an anecdote or insights that she'd like to share.
I just think the key here, we just spent a ton of time on this slide, right? 15 minutes on the slide. That's a long time for y'all in the presentation to be listening to it. So I just want to layer on one thing. The number one job when you're writing an email is to figure out what the action is that needs to happen after it. So, and then the second job is to figure out whose action it is, right? Is it your action or is it somebody else's action? So if you need them to give you something, if you need an approval, if you need budget, if you need input, if you need whatever, then make sure that it is an action-oriented email. There really isn't another way to do that kind of email. If you need something from somebody and your work is going to be held up until that is done, that's it, right? So first job is what needs to happen, and second job is who needs to have it happen. If the job is yours and you're basically like, look, I want to let you know that I'm adding value, I'm doing great work, and I'm just charging along, stop me, but otherwise I'm on my way, then the second format is the right one to do. So really answering those 2 questions: what is the action that has to happen out of this email? And then, whose action is it? And really, if one of those 2 things isn't in play, if there is no action from either them or from you, don't send the email. Part of your job for sending better emails is to send only the emails that really need to be said. And so Naman really layered on how to write a great email, how to explain the differences, but I just wanted to make sure I called those to attention.
Yeah. Well, Jenny Ray, you're jumping ahead, right? There's only 3 reasons to write an email, and here they are. Right. Either I can drive immediate action. If I can't drive immediate action, but still need to drive some kind of action, I set up a meeting, or I'm building trust. And I'm just say, hey, like you said, I'm charging along, put up the stop sign if you want, but if you don't, I'm going to keep on going. And if your emails don't fit one of these 3 purposes, we'd really challenge whether that email needs to be sent at all. And so you're right. It's important to know how to write the email, but it's just as important, if not more important, to understand what email to write to begin with.
Mom, let's pause for a second and just see if there's any questions about what we've covered so far, because I think we've given some really great structure and accent and action. So, Eden, if you see something that covers what we've already covered so far in the chat, do you want to read out some of those questions for us to answer?
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so I have a question. It says, when sending a cold email to a partner to request a 15-minute chat, could using action required in the subject line potentially have a negative effect? I'm assuming he or she would think, who are you asking me to take an action on a cold email like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I would not say action required to anyone I've never met before, but I might, in a cold email, still start my subject line with just action in the brackets. So one of my goals when I'm writing a cold email, one of my first goals is to get them to open the email. And so I need to make sure that if they've never heard of me before, that there's something in the subject line that compels them to open the email. And a subject line that begins with action in the brackets with then a clear ask afterwards, maybe it's 15-minute call next Thursday at 4 p.m., question mark, is a compelling subject line, because I'm like, okay, what's the action that this person's asking me to take? What do they want to talk to me about? Do I have a meeting next Thursday that I forgot about? Right? Like, let me open this email and see what's happening. My first goal is to be compelling enough to open the email. And my second goal is that the copy of the email is compelling enough to get them to say yes to what my request is. And so just to summarize, I think including action in the subject line of an email like that is valuable. I think saying action required is probably a step too far.
I feel like you're sharing some of our trade secrets, so don't do too much of that. All right, I have another question from the chat. If you have both info and action requirement regarding the same issue, do you send two emails separately?
I'll answer that one. If there's an action required, it's an action required email. So like you might have to provide some info, but it should be like for your information PS perhaps, or a like just for a little bit of context, like this is why I need you to take the action. But if there's an action required, it's an action required email. Just make it simple for yourself. Don't overthink that.
And if you're trying to drive 4 actions, to me, that's 4 different emails. Like a couple of weeks ago to our team, I sent 6 different emails at the same time related to 6 different things that I was asking them to do, because I knew if I sent one email with 6 action items, they wouldn't do any of them. And we would just spin wheels and get lost. And so I found that, especially for folks that use their email inboxes as a to-do list, writing separate emails for each action that you are requesting helps them keep using their inbox as a to-do list and check it off when they're done, and helps everybody keep track of what's happened and what's not. Because I can go into my sent folder as well and see what I got a response to and what I didn't get a response to. And so one action per email, and if it includes both an action and an update, it's an action email. Any other questions?
Nope, that's it for now. Thanks.
Naman, quick question in reference to your point just now about multiple actions being in separate emails. So what if the audience has a very little time? There are 3 action items, for example, that I have regarding one specific project, if you will, to the same audience. But again, time is of importance to them. So I'm going to stop there and ask your input.
So a couple of different solutions. You could send 3 really short emails. If time is of the essence, I think clarifying what each of the 3 actions are is actually more important. But if you feel like your audience isn't going to respond well to 3 different emails hitting their inbox back to back to back, then you could send one email with an umbrella statement. These are the 3 actions that need to be taken to move this project forward by end of day Friday. Bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3, and then go on from there. So there are stakeholders that might respond better to that.
And I put in brackets action items, plural.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Now you
or even 3 actions.
3 action items.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, action. And it might be 3 actions requested by 5 p.m. Friday. That would be, I think, a really clear subject line.
That'll clinch the deal. Okay, thank you.
I'll give one more other solution here. Remember that the action can be a meeting, but the meeting doesn't have to be predetermined. So one of the things that works for me, I don't know if Naman would agree with this, but I would consider myself busy and not having a lot of time. I definitely can miss emails. I probably get 1,500 a day. So when people just say, here are the 3 items that I need from you, I'm going to call you, or I'm going to send you a text as a reminder. I actually really like that because I've got all the content. I can open it up when we're on the phone or when we're kind of grabbing 5 minutes at the margin, or I'm picking up my kids or something like that. But then they've pre-thought what everything is that they need, and then it's all organized in advance. So the action for 3 items can also be a short meeting, whether it's pre-scheduled or whether it's just I'll give you a quick call and we'll see if we can knock these out.
Awesome. Thanks so much for those.
Absolutely. Great questions, Liz. Thank you so much. So short reminders for everybody just on one slide. If you're writing an email, make sure it's titled explicitly. To Jenny Ray's point, make one specific ask at the beginning. If you're going to ask me for, generally speaking, multiple things, I will get distracted and not give you anything that you want. Follow the rule of 3s. Give me 3 bullet points with the data I need to either understand why your request is important or how to execute it, and then provide a deadline. If you're checking these 4 boxes, you're ahead of 99% of people who we work with in terms of email communication. And you're going to find that you get faster and better responses to the emails that you're sending. I want to share with everybody, just really, really briefly, an example of a sales email that one of our clients received. And so you'll see this example here on the slide. And if y'all just want to pop in chat what you like or don't like about the email, let's take 60 seconds to digest this. There's a lot going on here. Let's see what we got. Someone says too many words.
Mon, you gave us a cue in the title.
Yeah, that's true.
Now nobody has the psychological safety to say that this is a great email, the best they've ever read.
I'm liking what I'm seeing here in the chat, and some themes that I'll just call out. There's a lot of text.
Too much.
There are grammar mistakes. I would have stopped reading this email after the first word because the I is not capitalized. We had people asking us about cold emails. If you open an email by telling me your name, all that tells me is that I don't know you, and I stop reading. So if you are doing any kind of networking or cold sales outreach, I wouldn't start with my name. The bolding is confusing. There's a lot of it. There is a lot of jargon.
Too much, right? Yeah. How much bolding is the right amount of bolding?
So for me, I've often found that the most helpful thing to bold inside of an email is the deadline, just to anchor people on what the kind of timing guidance is for the request. But outside of that, I don't do much bolding at all.
Yeah, I'd say 1 to 2 bolding, if not just the deadline, always the deadline, but then maybe the action too. If there's a specific action, if there's 3 actions, then you don't bold all of those, you just bold the deadline.
But here, the bolding has lost its power because there's too much of it. I talked to this particular client, and he didn't understand what some of the jargon was inside of this email. So he did not know what CMMI meant. Beware of the curse of knowledge. That's not a new concept, but I'll just very, very quickly explain it for folks on here who aren't familiar, which is, right, in this example, Sophia's level of knowledge in her industry is like 9 out of 10. Like, she's very knowledgeable. And David, who she's writing here, probably has a 2 or a 3 out of 10 knowledge level on the same domain. So she thinks that she's dumbed her message down to like a 5 out of 10 in terms of expertise. And she's like, I'm making this really clear. My level of understanding is at a 9. I'm communicating at a 5, without realizing that David's level of understanding is at a 2 or a 3, and it's still way over his head. So beware of the curse of knowledge. You know more about what you're writing about than probably your stakeholders and your audience do. So keep a critical eye out for jargon that you're using. for specialized language that you're using that is second nature to you, but may not be second nature to your audience. And really try and simplify and distill your message down to where anybody could understand what it is you're asking them to do. Bullet points here are also weird. They've got a line through them, makes it look like a negative. There's a lot going on here in this email. You've also got the ask at the very bottom, which I never would have gotten to. And the ask to me is a very presumptuous one, which is, hey, can you find 30 minutes in your calendar to talk to me? If I'm the one initiating the outreach, the communication, I'm going to do as much work as possible. And I want to help my prospect, my client, my stakeholder find a time instead of have them dig through their calendar to find 30 minutes. So here's how I rewrote it. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's much better. And there's a lot of information that I thought Sophia should have included that she didn't. Right? I think one of the downsides to the email I showed you is not just that there was a lot of information, but she shared the wrong information that would have gotten me to say yes to the request, which is for a call. And so I highlighted in yellow the information that I actually would have shared if I was Sophia to try and get David to talk to me. And so beware also of not just cutting content for the sake of cutting content. This is not just about sending short emails. It's about sending short emails and include the right information. And for each request, for each stakeholder, the right information may be a little bit different. Jenny Ray may need to know something different to say yes to your request than I will have to know. And so putting yourself in your stakeholder's shoes, thinking about their job function, their title, where they sit inside the organization, how they're managed, and the KPIs that they're measured by will help you understand what will be important to them relative to the request that you're making. Overall, we found that specificity drives action. So the more specific you can be with the request that you're making, the more specific that you can be with the time and the day you're asking for a meeting, the more likely you are to get a favorable response. So 3 quick examples. In the venture capital world, if everything else is equal, you're more likely to get funded if you ask for $1.15 million than if you ask for around $1 million. Why? You're asking for what's perceived as a more specific number, even though it's higher, and it sends the message that there's a purpose to every dollar you're asking for. Folks who are experiencing homelessness are more likely to get a favorable response from all of us if they ask us for $1.50 for a cup of coffee than if they just ask us for loose change. The more specific they are, the more likely we are to respond favorably. The same is true with charities and nonprofit organizations. If you'll notice with the organizations that you support over the last decade, they've gotten much better at tying your donation to a specific outcome. This is going to put school supplies in one backpack for 1 month. And they've also gotten much bolder at asking for what I would consider weird dollar amounts. Like a lot of the organizations that my wife and I support, we used to support them at like $30 a month, and now it's like $33 a month. Now it's like $42 a month. Part of that is because expenses have gone up, but part of that is because they're tapping into this behavioral psychology that the more specific they can be with the request, the more likely they are to get a yes from me. And so keep that in mind as you're putting your emails together. Specific requests, specific timing guidance, it will be more likely to get you a quicker and a better response. Eden, let's open it up for questions if we have them, but then I want to do an exercise.
Great. Okay. So the question came up, would it be a better practice to put the requested action in the first line?
It would be. It would be. I think, is that question referring to the example that I showed, the example email?
Yeah, so we were going back and forth in the chat about why not put your first name or put your name in the first line. And so that they're wondering if they can replace it.
Yeah, so I'd never put my name in the email. It's in your signature. Like, I already know your name. Again, all that does is create distance between you and me. Because if you have to tell me your name, it means I don't know you. So don't include your name in the email. Here, you could have included the action in the first line. I shifted the framework a little bit here because this was a cold email. And my assumption was that David had never, ever heard of me or Signity before. And so I included one line of context ahead of time to get him to keep reading. All right. And that's one of the beauties and the challenges of this framework is that they're guidelines, they're not rules. There's a lot of flexibility within the structure for you to adapt it to your needs. And so here, I think what makes more sense is to start with a line or a sentence of context, maybe a little bit of FOMO. I'm sure you've already heard of us, but here's a quick refresher. Okay, interesting, right? Okay, I'm supposed to have heard of you. Let me keep reading. Okay, here's who we are and here's who we work with. Oh, those are companies I benchmark against. Wait, my competitors are doing this? Let me keep reading. And then get right to the action. Remember, I mentioned when I was walking through the email structure, it's okay to start with a line of pleasantries, right? Like, or like a line of what I'll call small talk. So here you could consider that to be the small talk before I get right into the action. But very, very early on, Eden, you're absolutely right. You want to elevate the action that you're asking the person to take.
Great, thanks. That's it for the chat for now.
Wonderful. Well, I want to give folks 3 to 4 minutes here in the session to write or rewrite a draft email you need to send this week. Maybe you've been putting off writing an email because it's going to take too much thought, or because there's a lot you have to pull together to write in a concise and clear way. We want to give you a few minutes here just to work on that now. And then we'll end with a short discussion and Q&A. Maybe you just even run into challenges here over the next 3 to 4 minutes as you're writing a draft email and you want to workshop through those with us. We'll give you an opportunity to do that here in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock, give you a chance to apply this immediately, and then we will move on. All right. That's 3 minutes. So hopefully you made some good progress on structuring or rewriting an email that you have to send later today. Liz, do you want to share your email in the chat if you don't mind, and we can take a quick look at it?
Or you want me to just copy and paste it in the chat?
Yeah, if you don't mind. And as you're doing that, is there additional context that we need to know around who the stakeholders are, any kind of historical relationship that would be helpful for us to be aware of?
Sure. So this is a follow-up on a deadline that was provided in our prior meeting for submission of topic outlines. They're all contributors towards various training topics that they've each been assigned to tackle, essentially. And the deadline is coming due this Friday. But out of that meeting, there were these 3 action items. And I've got the very first one being high priority. That's the one we absolutely need for this Friday. Is that enough of a
that's
context?
helpful. Yeah,
okay.
Would love to take a look at the content.
Sure.
We'll take just a minute to see here.
Absolutely. I'm just going to pop it in here. And I choose everyone. Is that right, or just you?
That's if you're okay with everyone seeing it, which I think you are, then yes.
Yeah, there's nothing tell me if this came through.
Yep, there it is.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And I have to say that the subject line I chose to write is in square brackets, action items. That's what I was referring to a while ago, action items. Provide topic outline by November 17th. Like I highlighted the most pressing of deadlines. And then, in reference to development of go-to-market trainings. So action items, provide topic outline by November 17th. and development of go-to-market trainings. Might be too long, but
Okay, wonderful. Is I couple changes I'd recommend here.
sure.
I think I'd elevate the. I would bucket the ask, because you've really got two specific asks here. It's the outline and it's the key contact.
Yeah.
So I'd say, team, as per what we agreed to in our call, you can even skip that. Just say, team, just a friendly reminder.
Yeah.
Please complete the following 2 action items by this Friday, November 17th.
Okay.
And bold that.
Yep. Yeah. First, provide your outline here. Maybe it's a hyperlink, right? And then on slide 4.
Yeah.
And I think one way you can clarify, Liz, the ask is not give people too many options. So you're giving them the option to input it themselves or send it to you. And I just let them input it themselves.
Okay.
So,
and if they have issue, they know to contact me anyway.
They know to contact you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the second one would be identify key contact for your topic group, or maybe identify key contact and potential SMEs for your topic group.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if everybody needs to know the following key contacts you already have.
And they'll see it anyways when they go through that link to the document. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then I'd probably include like that last bullet point as like a sentence outside of the structure of the bullet points.
Okay.
And I would just say almost as a next step, right? Like, in addition, if you experience any other issues in regards to completing content by mid-December,
right,
please let me know.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Got it.
And I think we were able to maybe cut that in half and increase the clarity as well.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing your work with us.
No problem. My pleasure.
So that's just a quick preview of what happens in the one-on-one kind of sessions that we do with our partners and our clients. Is you bring a deliverable and we take 30 minutes and we just workshop it, whether it's a presentation, an email, a meeting agenda, etc.
Naman, I have one poll that I'd love to pop up for a second, just out of curiosity. Is that all right if I put that up?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, amazing. So after today's session, we've given y'all a little bit of an introduction. Just curious if you would be interested in if you're just here to learn, that's great. We do these on purpose for that. But if you're interested in a group training, joining one seat, if you're interested in a group training, hosting us inside your organization, or if you're interested in a solo training, working one-on-one, we can't see who's answering this. We're just kind of curious to figure out where you are as an audience. That will help us continue to build great trainings going forward. Naman, I'll let you wrap up while everybody's answering that poll.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really just wanted to wrap up with a little bit of reflection and ask folks to unmute yourself and just share what's one thing you'll do differently after today. And if you feel comfortable sharing, what will be your biggest challenge in doing so? We'd just love to make a little bit of time for reflection and Q&A as we wrap up our time together. So you can unmute yourself if you'd like to share with us verbally. You can also engage with us in the chat if that's easier for you.
So I know I spoke already, Naman, but I'm just going to mention, since the last training, and I used to do this, but sporadically, not consistently, in the subject line to put the action item there. But your training just reconfirmed that is in fact good practice. And I can't remember where I learned that, but clearly aligns with, in brackets, what it is, essentially the type of email that I'm sending. So action, update, what have you. Love that.
I love that. Are you seeing an increase in terms of the speed of responses that you're getting or the quality of responses that you're getting?
Um, the speed. So, uh, just 2 days ago, I sent an action email. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think it came faster for sure. Not everyone replied instantaneously, but it did trigger replies definitely the day after, as opposed to like this Thursday or morning of Friday. So that's pretty cool.
Amazing. Amazing. That's a win.
It is. Thank you.
Liz, I love the fact that you mentioned that. Thank you everyone for joining. Naman, you might want to read out a couple of these things, but if you do great on emails, people won't just think better of you, but they'll do what you ask them to do, which is the biggest friction to remove in your daily work life. So if you ask them to do something and they do it, gosh, that's a win. I would definitely say.
Totally agree. I love it, and I actually feel so much better just continuing this practice going forward, but consistently. Yeah.
Love it. Naman, anything else that you want to call out?
Christy, if you don't mind unpacking your comment, I'd love to have a short conversation around that. And I don't know if you're still on the meeting or not. But
I am.
Okay. So people say you're too direct. Do they mean that as a compliment or not as a compliment?
Well, let me give you a context. I'm working in higher education for the last 8 years. It seems like in higher education, there is this kind of unwritten rules of pleasantries. So if I make it too direct, I do that differentiations like, instead of action required, I said respond required, something that is less. But I know that my message is that I want you to do something for me. Or if it is just information sharing or updates, yes, I do that. But my God, that's so many times. Even the senior leader said, "Oh, can you tone down a little bit on your email?" I don't think so. People like the way you, um, write emails for whatever reason. I get what I need. I get the credibility of obviously, but I don't know. I want to know from your point of view, is there a way that I can add into my approach so that people don't find that I'm too direct? I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And higher education is a unique world and a unique culture for sure.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of ideas here, Christine. I'll let Jenny Ray jump in as well. The first is to inside of the bullet points, like when you're sharing why you're asking for something, to explain why it's good for everyone, not just good for you. And I found that higher ed is a really, really collaborative culture and a culture where people are concerned about wins as a team. And so I think messaging that is really focused on, I need this from you because it's going to make my life easier, maybe doesn't land well in that context. But
I
messaging,
guess.
right? Messaging that's focused on, here's why this is good for all of us. I think would play really well inside of the world of higher education. I think the other thing that is sometimes underrated, and this is for everybody, and I think this is a great question because I didn't bring this up today, is just thanking people. And I'm sure you already do this, but I think, just at the end of the email, just thanking people in advance for what they're going to do for you, or thanking people in advance for their response, or, messaging maybe, inside of meetings that you're going to propose a timeline or a deadline, and that if the timeline you're proposing is not feasible because you don't have visibility into everything that's going on, like welcome people to give you a little bit of feedback or pushback.
Suggestions.
And I think that
cool.
can go a long way towards setting timelines and deadlines while, being perceived as a little bit more collaborative.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Really enjoyed this conversation. If again, you would like more help with your emails or other communication, please reach out. We'd love to help. Otherwise, we'll see you on next month's training. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.